Welcome to the place where fear finds you. So sit back, put on your headphones, and remember some stories don't end when the video does.
Alaska is one of the most beautiful places on Earth. It's a land of towering mountains, icy rivers, endless forests, and skies so wide they almost feel unreal. But behind all that beauty, Alaska hides a darker side. It's the kind of place where strange things happen, and sometimes no one is around to witness them. The state is so big, so remote, and so empty that entire groups of people can vanish without a trace. And the only evidence left behind is a mystery that no one can ever solve. Tonight, we're going to step into that side of Alaska, the side that people don't always talk about out loud. The side filled with disturbing true stories that can make your blood run cold. The first story takes us back to the 1980s, to a small fishing village sitting on the edge of the icy coast. Fishing was life in this place. Men would go out every morning, no matter how dangerous the sea was, because that's how they fed their families. One night, after a storm rolled in, a group of fishermen went missing. At first, people thought it was just another tragedy at sea, something that sadly wasn't unusual in Alaska. But when the men's boat was found, the entire town froze in fear. The boat was still floating quietly near the shore, not destroyed, not even badly damaged. Inside, all of the gear was there, untouched. Nets, food, supplies, everything was perfectly in place. The only thing missing was the men. No bodies, no signs of a struggle, nothing. Some of the villagers whispered about what they had seen during the storm. Strange lights, glowing above the ocean, moving in patterns that no normal storm cloud or lightning bolt could make. Some said the lights hovered like they were watching the boat before it disappeared from sight. Others swore they saw beams coming down into the water. The Coast Guard searched for days but found nothing. Families never got answers. The men were simply gone, as if they had been erased. To this day, nobody knows what happened that night. Was it the ocean? Was it something natural? Or was it something else entirely? Something that came from above? Something that took them away and left everything else behind? That question has haunted the town for decades. The second story comes from a lonely stretch of highway near Anchorage, called the Seward Highway. If you've ever driven it at night, you know how unsettling it can feel. It's long, winding, surrounded by mountains and forest, with very little light. Drivers often say they feel like someone is watching them as they pass through the darker stretches. But for years, people have been reporting something far stranger. Many drivers have seen a woman on the side of the road, wearing a white dress, standing there and waving for help. Sometimes she looks desperate. Sometimes she just stands quietly, staring at the passing cars. People who have tried to stop and help her describe the same terrifying moment. As soon as they get close, she vanishes into thin air, leaving only empty road behind. Some believe she is the ghost of a young woman who died in a car accident there decades ago. Truck drivers in particular have chilling stories. They say they've seen her in their rear-view mirrors, sitting in the back seat of their trucks. One driver said he nearly swerved off the road when he realized the pale figure was sitting just a few feet behind him, her head tilted to the side, her eyes empty. By the time he looked again, she was gone. He said he still refuses to drive that road alone at night. Whether she's a restless spirit or just a trick of the mind brought on by exhaustion and long drives, people continue to see her, and the legend of the woman in white along the Seward Highway grows every year. Then we move to something even larger, something so mysterious it has become one of the biggest unsolved puzzles in Alaskan history. It's called the Alaskan Triangle, an area between Anchorage, Juneau, and Barrow. On maps, it looks like just another piece of land, but in reality, it's a zone where thousands of people have gone missing over the years. Hunters, hikers, entire families, even airplanes. They vanish without leaving wreckage, footprints, or any clue at all. One of the most famous disappearances was a plane carrying high-ranking officials. Despite an enormous military search that covered miles of land and sea, nothing was ever found, not the plane, not the passengers, not even debris. Some people say the land itself swallows them, like there are hidden caves or cracks that lead to places we don't understand. Others whisper about portals, strange forces, or even abductions by something not of this earth. Whatever the cause, the Alaskan Triangle remains one of the most unsettling mysteries in the state. People enter, and far too often, they never come back. The fourth story takes us to a place that no longer exists, a small village called Portlock. Back in the 1940s, this town was alive with families, fishing, and everyday life. But then, something started happening that changed everything. People began to find bodies near the river, torn apart in ways that no animal could explain. Trees were found with claw marks, so deep and so wide, they looked like something huge had been raking its hands against them. At first, people tried to blame bears. But the more bodies appeared, the harder it was to believe that explanation. The villagers began to whisper about a creature from their old legends, the Nantinak. It was said to be something like Bigfoot, but larger, stronger, and far more violent. It didn't just stay in the shadows, it hunted. Families grew so terrified that they left the village. Not slowly, not over time. They abandoned everything in one-night homes, tools, boats. They just walked away and never came back. To this day, Portlock is abandoned, and many people refuse to go near it. Hunters who have camped nearby say they still feel watched. Some even claim they've heard heavy footsteps outside their tents, but when they look, nothing is there. The village stands frozen in time, a reminder of something that terrified an entire community into running for their lives. And finally, we come to the story of the Kushtaka. This is not just a story, but part of Tlingit legend, passed down for generations. The Kushtaka is a shapeshifter, something that can appear as a human, sometimes as a friendly face, or even as a lost child. It lures people closer, making them think they are helping someone in need. But once you follow it, you never come back. Some stories say it takes you into the water and drowns you. Others say it traps your soul forever. In the forests near Sitka, people still claim to hear voices calling their names, even when they are completely alone. Sometimes it's the voice of a family member, sometimes a friend. But when they look around, no one is there. The scariest accounts are from people who say they saw loved ones who had already passed away, standing among the trees, motioning for them to come closer. One hunter admitted that he nearly followed what looked like his brother, only to realize, at the very last moment, that his brother had been dead for years. He turned and ran, and to this day, he swears he felt something chasing him back through the woods. For many Alaskans, the Kushtaka isn't just a story, it's a warning. Don't trust what you see in the dark, and don't follow voices that call to you, no matter how familiar they sound. These first 5 stories already paint a disturbing picture of Alaska, a place that looks peaceful and untouched by time, but is filled with secrets hiding in the shadows. Disappearances, ghosts, creatures, and voices that shouldn't exist. And these are only the beginning. The deeper you go into Alaska's history and legends, the stranger and scarier it gets. Some say the darkness of the long nights makes the land itself restless, like it's alive and hungry. Others say it's simply the isolation and the vast wilderness that makes people see things that aren't there. But when entire villages vanish, when planes go missing, when mutilated bodies are found, and when multiple people report seeing the exact same ghost standing on the highway, it's hard to believe it's all just imagination. Whatever the truth is, one thing is certain. Alaska may be beautiful, but it's also one of the most disturbing places on Earth, and we've only scratched the surface of its darkest stories. Our 6th story begins in the wilderness near Nome, a place where the mountains rise like jagged teeth, and the snow never seems to melt. A hunter, well known in his community for being experienced and careful, vanished during one of his usual trips into the mountains. At first, nobody worried too much. Hunters in Alaska often stayed out longer than expected, sometimes because they tracked an animal deeper than planned, or because snow blocked the trails. But when he didn't come back after days, his friends started to search. They combed the mountainsides, following the paths he usually took, shouting his name into the wind. The first thing they found was strange. His rifle was leaning neatly against a tree, as if he had carefully placed it there himself. That alone was odd. No hunter leaves his weapon behind, especially not in the wild, where bears and wolves roam. They kept searching, but found nothing. Weeks later, when hope was fading, his body turned up miles away from where the rifle had been. The discovery was unsettling in more ways than one. He was barefoot, his boots nowhere to be found. His jacket was missing too, even though the snow was thick and the temperatures had dropped dangerously low. It looked as though he had walked 4 miles with no protection, yet there were no signs of frostbite on his feet. Stranger still, his footprints had been visible in the snow leading away from the area, but they ended abruptly in the middle of nowhere, as if he had suddenly vanished into thin air. There were no signs of an attack, no tracks from animals, and no struggle. The police were called, but they could never explain what had happened. Some of his friends believed he had been lured by something, maybe the same strange lights that people often reported seeing in the Nome skies. Others thought it was madness, brought on by isolation, but even that didn't explain the footprints stopping so suddenly. It was as if something had lifted him from the earth, leaving nothing behind but mystery. The 7th story is much stranger, and it takes us away from the mountains and into small towns across Alaska. In the 1970s, children began telling their parents about a black car that followed them. They described it as shiny, with dark-tinted windows, the kind of car that didn't belong on narrow dirt roads in tiny villages. It was called the Black Volga. The disturbing part was that no one ever saw the driver. The car would simply appear behind children walking home from school or playing near the road. Some kids swore that it came out of nowhere, appearing in the blink of an eye, even on roads where no car could have turned around or driven in unnoticed. The car would creep slowly behind them, keeping its distance, but never leaving. Then, just as suddenly as it came, it would vanish into thin air. Parents, at first, thought these were just stories children made up to scare each other. But then families started to notice something even more terrifying. A few children who had mentioned the Black Volga disappeared not long after. One boy told his mother that the car had stopped near him and the window had rolled down, but he couldn't see who was inside. He said a voice told him to come closer. His mother didn't believe him, brushing it off as imagination. Weeks later, the boy never came home. He was last seen walking near the same stretch of road where the car had been reported. Search parties looked everywhere, but there was no trace of him. Similar disappearances were whispered about in nearby towns. Police never found a suspect, never identified a car, and could never connect the stories with real evidence. Still, the legend of the Black Volga spread across Alaska, chilling parents and children alike. Even today, older generations remember those warnings. Never approach a black car if you can't see who's inside. The 8th story centers around Mount Marathon in Seward, a rugged mountain that overlooks the town and the icy waters below. Every year, the town hosts the famous Mount Marathon race, where hundreds of people climb to the top and then race back down in one of the most dangerous foot races in the world. It's exhausting, brutal, and thrilling. But the mountain holds a much darker reputation. Locals say that hikers often hear screams echoing through the rocky slopes. But whenever they search for the source, they find nothing. Some describe the screams as high-pitched, almost inhuman, while others say they sound like someone calling for help. More than one hiker has sworn they followed the sound, only to find themselves lost on trails that weren't supposed to exist. One of the strangest cases happened during the race itself. A man running in the annual event simply vanished in front of hundreds of people. He was seen by several spectators at one point on the trail, but when the group of runners came down from the mountain, he wasn't with them. At first, people thought he had been injured and taken off the trail, but after hours of searching, no one found him. He hadn't checked in at the start or finish, and none of the medical tents had seen him. The search continued for days. Helicopters scanned the rocky slopes. Volunteers combed the trails. Dogs sniffed the ground. Nothing. It was as if the mountain had swallowed him whole. To this day, his body has never been found. For many locals, the screams and the disappearance confirm what they've always believed. The mountain isn't just rock and dirt. It's alive, and it doesn't want to let go of those it chooses to keep. Our ninth story brings us back to Nome, the same town haunted by strange disappearances. For decades, in the late 1990s, several residents vanished under mysterious circumstances. People disappeared from their homes, from the streets, and even while walking between bars in the center of town. At first, police suspected serial killers. Nome has harsh weather, but too many people were vanishing under conditions that didn't make sense. Families begged for answers, and eventually, the FBI stepped in to investigate. They interviewed witnesses, collected reports, and searched for connections. But the official explanation never came. Meanwhile, locals whispered about a different theory: alien abductions. Many people in Nome reported strange lights in the sky during the times of the disappearances. Some said the lights hovered silently, while others described beams shining down toward the ground. A few people even claimed to have missing time, moments where they couldn't remember hours of their lives. The mystery became so famous that it inspired the movie The Fourth Kind. Though Hollywood twisted the truth into something more dramatic, the reality is much more unsettling because the official FBI files remain sealed, and families still have no closure. Were the disappearances the work of criminals, the result of the environment, or something far stranger, something that came from the skies? That question still hangs heavily over the town. The 10th story may be the most disturbing of them all, because it happened inside the safety of a person's home. In Fairbanks, a woman woke in the middle of the night to an unsettling sound. Her back door creaked open, even though she remembered locking it. At first, she thought it might just be the wind, or maybe a neighbor, but she was too tired to investigate. She closed the door, locked it again, and went back to sleep. The next morning, she walked into the kitchen and froze. There on the floor was a footprint, wet and fresh, as if someone had stepped inside with bare feet. The print was large, much larger than hers, and she lived alone. She tried to convince herself it was just a trick of her imagination, but deep down, she knew it. WASN, single quotes T. Over the next week, neighbors began to report seeing something strange around their houses late at night. A massive shadowy figure moving slowly across the yards, sometimes pausing near windows, sometimes standing just far enough away to blend into the darkness. One man swore he saw glowing eyes staring at him from the tree line. Others thought it was just a large bear wandering too close to town, but the shape was wrong. It was too tall, too upright, almost like a man. Whatever it was, it seemed to be watching, waiting. The woman who found the footprint couldn't sleep for weeks, convinced that whatever left that mark had been standing in her house while she lay in bed, completely unaware. To this day, she refuses to talk about it in detail, saying only that she moved out shortly afterward and never looked back. By the end of these stories, Alaska starts to feel less like a place of pure wilderness and beauty, and more like a land filled with secrets that refuse to stay buried. Every mountain, every stretch of road, every small town carries whispers of the unknown. Hunters vanish without reason. Children are stalked by ghostly cars. Mountains swallow people whole. Towns are haunted by strange lights, and even the safety of home can be broken by something that doesn't belong. The more you listen, the more it feels like Alaska itself is alive, always watching, always waiting, holding on to mysteries that may never be solved. And as chilling as these tales are, we're not done yet. The darkness in Alaska runs deeper still. When you think about Alaska, the first image that comes to mind is usually one of beauty. Snowy mountain peaks glowing pink in the midnight sun, forests stretching as far as the eye can see, rivers frozen into glass, and a silence so deep it almost feels sacred. But silence is not always peaceful. Silence can hide danger. In Alaska, silence can feel like it is waiting, holding its breath, and if you stay long enough, you start to wonder what exactly it is waiting for. Some people say the land itself watches you, listens to you, and sometimes it decides not to give you back. Locals often warn outsiders about wandering too far into the wilderness alone. At first, it sounds like common sense advice. There are wild animals, sudden snowstorms, freezing rivers, and cliffs that can take a life in seconds. But if you listen closely to the way people say it, you notice something else. They don't just say it's about bears or the cold. They say it like it's about something else, something they can't name directly. They tell you with that quiet seriousness in their eyes, the kind of seriousness that comes from knowing too. Many stories of people who stepped into the wilderness and never returned. The Alaskan Triangle continues to be one of the most mysterious parts of this strange land. Thousands of lives have been lost in it, swallowed without a trace, without wreckage, without remains. Planes vanished from the sky, as though the clouds themselves opened and swallowed them whole. Hikers disappear mid-trail, leaving their gear behind as though they never meant to walk away. Even seasoned hunters, the kind who know every sound of the forest and every danger it hides, sometimes never return home. For the families left behind, the grief is mixed with a kind of madness. Because it's not just losing someone, it's losing them to nothing. No answers, no evidence, just silence. And the silence in Alaska is louder than anywhere else. Portlock, the abandoned village, is still standing, but only as a ghost of itself. The houses are empty, the tools rusted, and the docks rotting into the water. People sometimes visit out of curiosity, but most who do never stay long. They describe a heavy feeling in the air, like they're being watched. The forest around Portlock is too quiet, and sometimes silence is worse than noise. Hunters who camp nearby say they hear heavy steps outside their tents, thuds that sound too large to be a man, but too deliberate to be an animal. Some have returned to town pale and shaken, swearing they will never go back. And when you remember that an entire community once chose to run away overnight, abandoning their homes forever, you realize that whatever chased them away is something no one wants to face. The strange lights in the skies above Alaska still continue to be reported. Fishermen on the coast describe them as glowing orbs that hover above the water, shifting in colors, moving in ways no plane could. Pilots have told stories of being followed by lights that dart across the sky at impossible speeds, vanishing before their eyes. Locals sitting by their windows at night sometimes see them above the trees, glowing faintly in the darkness like something searching, something scanning the ground. Each sighting leaves behind questions that no one can answer. If the lights are natural, why do they move like machines? If they are machines, why are they silent? And why do they appear only in the loneliest parts of Alaska? It's no wonder that alien abduction theories have tied themselves so tightly to places like Nome, where people vanish as though taken by something from the sky. The most unsettling truth about these stories is that they aren't just tales told around a campfire to scare children. They come from real people, hunters who know the land better than anyone, fishermen who live their entire lives on the sea, hikers, locals, and even official police reports. These are people with nothing to gain from lying, people who wanted answers just as badly as anyone else. That's what makes them so disturbing. These things actually happened, and the mystery around them has never been solved. A fisherman's boat is found floating, food untouched, crew missing forever. A driver on the Seward Highway slams on the brakes for a ghostly woman in white who vanishes before their eyes. A runner on Mount Marathon disappears from a race in front of a crowd of hundreds, never to be seen again. A woman wakes in Fairbanks to find a wet footprint on her kitchen floor, far too large to belong to her. These are not just old legends. They are events etched into the history of the people who lived them. The deeper you think about it, the more unsettling Alaska becomes. It's not just a place where accidents happen. It's not just about wild animals, brutal cold, or endless wilderness. It's about the things that keep happening, over and over, the patterns of disappearances, the echoes of screams in the mountains, the strange lights above towns where people go missing, the abandoned villages that still stand empty after decades. It feels like there's a shadow cast over the land, something ancient and unseen, something that waits for people to cross the wrong path. Some Alaskans believe the land has a spirit of its own, something that is both alive and dangerous, and that it takes what it wants without warning. Others believe the stories are tied to creatures, old legends of shapeshifters, hunters in the woods, and things that mimic familiar voices to lure people deeper into the dark. And then there are those who swear that the answers lie above, in the skies, where the strange lights and sudden vanishings suggest that we are not as alone as we'd like to believe. The creepiest part is how ordinary some of the settings are. A stretch of road, a quiet village, a mountain trail, a back door in a neighborhood where everyone knows each other. These aren't distant myths from centuries ago. They're stories that could happen to anyone, in places that people pass through every day. That's what makes Alaska so haunting. It hides its strangeness in plain sight, wrapped in beauty so overwhelming that you forget how dangerous it can be until it's too late. So if you ever find yourself in Alaska, remember this: it's not just the cold that can kill you, it's what you can't see. The empty roads, where headlights reveal shapes standing just beyond reach. The forests, where voices whisper your name even when no one is there. The mountains, where screams echo without a source. The skies, where lights dance in silence, watching. You never really know if you're alone, and maybe you aren't. Some people believe the most terrifying part of Alaska is the isolation, but maybe the truth is that you're never truly isolated at all. Maybe something is always out there, moving just beyond the edge of the trees, waiting for you to take one wrong step into the silence. And in Alaska, silence has a way of never giving people back.